we are gathered here today to start the inaugural podcast of Game Talk Meow. I am, of course, as always, Meow, and here with me is...
Simple.
Well, that went just as I have expected it to go. Oh dear, oh dear. Yeah, and he's like, that's it. I'm not even here. I'm not even here.
Over.
Professionalism. That is what we are all about on this podcast. But of course, we will be talking about Gacha games. We will be talking about Genshin, and we will be talking about Honkai Star Rails as well. Star Rails, or maybe Star Rail, let me tell you. But we are here because we have been discussing, so let me just set the scene for you. For the past, I don't know, months, maybe even 2 months, we have been meeting every Saturday, and we have been talking non-stop about, at first Genshin, then Honkai, and just Gacha games in general. And we thought, you know what, we have so much to say. It's clearly, there is a lot boiling there, so let us share it with the audience. So let me get started. Josh is missing. Yes, Yuri-Knife. Josh is unfortunately missing. I'm sure he might be joining later, or he might not. I do not know. But I am hoping he will. Right. So, to get us set off, we have to kind of understand where we're coming from. So I'll get started and I'll talk a little bit how I got started in gaming, what is my background, and then I'll pose the same question, maybe. So here we go. My very first game, as far as I can remember, and we're talking about a computer game, was an arcade game. I don't remember where I was, but I remember distinctly this arcade cabinet, and it had this periscope on it, right? And you look into it, and there are ships. Press a button, shoot out a torpedo that goes, hits the ship, of course. So that is my very, very first memory that I have of gaming. Of course, I've done since then Pong, I've done all Street Fighter and all different kinds of games that you would usually expect from somebody this old. But my very first computer game was Warcraft 2, followed probably almost immediately by XCOM Terror from the Deep. And that kind of influenced my liking in games, and strategy games, etc. My very first JRPG, which is we're coming closer to Gacha games, guys. I do promise that. We're coming close to that. Was Final Fantasy VIII. It absolutely blew my mind, and to this day, it is probably still my favorite Final Fantasy game. Yes, Stipple might have something to say about that, but we'll let him talk about that himself. And of course, recently we got into the Gacha games, but that is my background in gaming. I play a lot of RPG games. I love RPG games. Fallout 1, Fallout 2, New Vegas, etc. Baldur's Gate, so that's Western RPGs. Of course, I have played Final Fantasies, loads of them. Some Ys games, etc. So, but this is pretty much my background in gaming. But, Stipple, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? How did you get into gaming, and what is your background before you got into Gacha games?
Yeah, I suppose that's the end of our journey here. But the beginning of the journey was very different. So, yeah, I'm a little bit younger, but at the same time, you basically got me into games, so it's all your fault.
It is guilty as charged. Sorry,
it's completely your fault. But I remember, like when I was, maybe 6-7 years old, I remember watching people play, PC games like Ultima Online,
Oh damn, that brings me back. Wow, yeah.
old MMO RPG. A lot of people mightn't even know that name, but yeah, it was one of the original MMORPGs.
OG for sure.
Watched, you know, you play like various different types of games, like shooters, and I remember Quake 2 actually quite distinctly. You playing Quake. That was really cool. And then Quake 3 came out, and you know, this was before I think there was a little bit too. The games were a bit too mature for me as a 6 or 7 year old, but it was really cool checking them out. And then eventually I got a PlayStation 1 for my birthday. It was actually my 6th birthday, so I was kind of like, while I was watching you play the PC games, I got my own PlayStation, and then we had like Abe's Odyssey on it.
Oh, Abe's Odyssey! Oh my god, that was the game, man!
And then eventually, you know, we got a PlayStation 2, and I got a PlayStation 3 and 4, you know, and up until today I have a PlayStation 5. So I've kind of been a PlayStation guy. I had a few Xboxes, but really,
Team Blue.
I'm kind of, yeah, well, sure, and PC, and I've been playing a lot of PC games as well, of course. So, like in more recent years, you know, I mean, if we want to talk Final Fantasy, you know, I got into Final Fantasy 8 just like you did. That was my first JRPG as well. And,
surprisingly
you know, I really
enjoyed
it.
Surprisingly enough. I wonder how did that happen.
I have no idea. No idea. But yeah, I did enjoy it. I had a great time with 8, 9, played 7, and then I played 10, and 10 was the one on the PlayStation 2, and that was like, look at these amazing graphics. It was so like, you know, so new and so amazing looking at the time. Like it was groundbreaking in some ways, you know, and yeah, I mean that was the one that I finished first and I loved the most, and that's kind of my favorite JRPG. But I've also played a lot of Western stuff. I've played, you know, some of the old Fallout games, the new Fallout games, like I played the new Baldur's Gate 3 that some people might be familiar with.
Yeah.
I've played Mass Effect. The Mass Effect trilogy was an amazing one. So really cool stuff there. Final Fantasy 14 I've got into in the last few years. So that's kind of how you ended up playing Final Fantasy 14 in the end as well. But yeah, I think if I see a question for my favorite RPG, I think it has to be Final Fantasy X. It was just like a defining one for when I was growing up, and I kept going back to it and grinding and trying to get all the ultimate weapons and all the, you know, big bad bosses and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. It was a really fun experience. Yeah, no, that's kind of my background, and then eventually we got to the, you know, the
Gacha
big
games.
the big Gacha.
The reason we're here. But Shermacloud, as for me, about my favorite RPG, that would be probably between Fallout 1 and Fallout 2. So that's the OG kind of CRPGs, so Western RPGs, not JRPGs. And that's probably replayed those two games more than any other RPG ever. And then any other game ever, actually. I usually complete the game and not come back to them. Some for good reason, I just want to treasure the memory. Others because they mightn't been that great. I mean, they were okay, but I wouldn't want to play through them again. But Fallout 1 and 2, I have replayed them many times. F for Doki Doki. Absolutely, Renai. Absolutely. That is definitely retro gaming, but for me, it wasn't retro gaming at the time. Those were the ones that were kind of formative years that I played them in. Very kind of special place in both Fallout 1 and 2.
Nice, nice. I see there's a question about PlayStation exclusive games.
Oh yeah,
I can answer
go
that.
ahead. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. In more recent years, I've been super into you know, a lot of the Sony pony games, if you want to call them that.
Okay.
And yeah, I like The Last of Us Part 1, Part 2. There's God of War, the 2018 kind of reboot, and then the sequel to that, God of War Ragnarok. I really loved those, finished those in the recent years. I played a bit of Ghost of Tsushima, the kind of the Japan-based one with the samurai, and the Death Stranding, which is a Kojima game. So I'm sure people are familiar with Kojima-san.
Oh yeah, I should still play it. Like I have it, I just never gotten around to play
Yeah,
it.
it's a very unique game. It is a very unique way. But there's still time. So
hey, until I die, there is still time. So hopefully there is still a very, very long time. But yeah,
fingers crossed.
Yeah. Right. And yes, Last of Us. That is a very good game. I think we both agree on that. But how did you actually get into the gacha games? Tell me, bro. How did you get into gacha?
Oh my god. Oh my god.
We're finally here. We're finally where we why we have set out.
I suppose a few years ago when people were talking about Genshin Impact, as that was like the new big thing, and gacha games have existed before Genshin Impact, of course. But 3 years ago Genshin came out, and that kind of changed the space, and it really showed like kind of the potential of where gacha games could be. Because I think before they were just seen as literally just like they're completely to extract your money. The gameplay was just about barely there, like auto battler type of games. They just kind of played themselves. You didn't really have to do much. You kind of customize your teams, that kind of stuff, and you pulled your characters, and there wasn't really much gameplay to speak of, right? And then Genshin comes out, and it's actually like, okay, there's really cool gameplay here. It's based on like the Breath of the Wild system that Nintendo created, and it's a really cool kind of open world game. You're exploring, you're finding new treasures and different collectibles, and you're exploring the map and fighting different types of enemies and bosses and all this kind of stuff. And at the time, like when Genshin came out, I was still quite ignorant about the whole space. I had no idea what this thing was, because when I heard gacha, I just had all these negative associations and connotations with the term, and I thought, okay, Genshin, okay, this must be just the same as the rest of them, right? It can't possibly be any better. Like, it has to be the same. And that's what I thought at the time. And then more recently, I think at the end of last year, at the start of this year, you started playing Genshin Impact. And then I saw your stream on YouTube, and you had some videos. Actually, you weren't streaming. You had a few videos that you were posting, and then I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then we had a chat about it on one of the weekends, and I looked at some of the footage, and I was like, oh, this is completely different than what I expected. This is like an actual video game.
It is an actual video. Oh my god!
This has like characters and cool gameplay and the big world and actual story as well. And I was like, wow, this is kind of impressive. And the combat system was really interesting. Like you had like you can switch between different characters, and there's different elements. And I was like, well, okay, there's a lot more to this than I thought. So then, after you got into it, then I got into it. So that's kind of that lineage, right there.
Absolutely. And Trevor McLean is actually just saying in the chat that they haven't played Genshin Impact until about a year ago, and spent 300 hours in the game.
Wow.
Since then, so and I think it is a testament to kind of this change in dynamic of the gacha games that, hey, there should be a game there. It should be fun.
Yeah.
But as for me, as Stipple was saying, that I was the first one to get into the gacha games, and Genshin Impact was the one. And the reason what served as an impetus, so because just like Stipple, I was very much in my mind. I only had negative connotations about gacha. Even Genshin Impact, all I heard was, oh, it's literally all designed to get your money. It's basically a trash game, kind of like Auto Battler, and I never investigated. But I have been watching, or I stream, as you might know, but I also do watch Twitch myself. And there is this content creator, a YouTuber, and of course streamer called Gigu, that I follow, and followed for a very long time, and this person is at fault for actually getting me involved in that. But he started as a pure anime fan, and he had a lot of anime content, and of course I do enjoy myself anime and manga, etc. So, and I kept watching him over the years, fallen off a little bit, and then I see, oh, he's actually streaming on Twitch. Let's have a look what he's doing. And he was playing Genshin Impact. Not only was he playing Genshin Impact, by the way, he did voice act in, I think, Honkai and maybe even Genshin. But there was a story. And apparently it was moving. I was like, because I just tuned in and he's like shedding a tear there. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? What is this? He's like, oh my god, no. And I'm like, whoa, Genshin Impact? Story? Tear-jerking moments? Surely not. So I gotta check this out. And of course I checked it and it's completely free. So I downloaded, installed it, and started playing it myself. And that's we got Impact. And of course, once I had a little bit of a taste, I just had to get involved. So, and this is where we are right now. We have both played Genshin Impact. I think Stipple got a little bit further into the game than I have, but I was the trailblazer. So it is my fault. It is. So I think, for me, what excited me the most about Genshin was seeing the story. Because in any game, story is probably the most important thing for me. I am there for the ride. That's why I love RPGs, because they are notorious for having a good story. And of course, that's why I resonated so much with the Literature Club, as some of you might know. But I have seen this kind of streamer or YouTuber, content creator that I respect, basically enjoying it so much. And I said, you know what, I gotta check it out. If he says that the story is moving, I have to check it out. And that's pretty much, that's what got me excited to try it out. But what about yourself, Stipple? Because I think you had slightly different perspective. When
yeah, for sure. I touched on it earlier, but really, what kind of got me excited to try it out was a few ideas. So it was that there was the prospect of a co-op, because you were saying, well, you know, we can play this, you know, by ourselves, but we could also maybe team up and do some content together. And I was like, you know, this could be a new game for us, you know, because we have played co-op games before, and we do like, you know, some cooperative games rather than necessarily, you know, PvP style games where you're fighting other players. You know, we wanted something where we could just tackle the content together and enjoy the story as well, and the combat and everything like that. So I think that was one of the elements, and then the other one was just like I saw the gameplay and I saw you fighting one of the kind of the mini bosses in the
I think that was like an elite, I think.
Yeah, it was like, you remember on the ice mountain where you have to like keep yourself, you have to keep yourself warm. I can't remember the name of the place, but yeah, basically the ice mountain, and
you know, if you played Genshin, you know what we're talking about. It's the big ass ice mountain. Come on.
It's like south of what's the first town called? Mondstadt?
Mondstadt, that's it.
Yeah, and it was added, you know, after the initial release. So when we started playing, it was already there, and it's really cool. You can just like walk down there. You can start doing some quests. You can freeze yourself and never recover. You know. So yeah, no, we were talking about it, and I saw that footage, and I was like, wow, this it's kind of cool. There's some interesting mechanics here. Maybe we can co-op it. We can play it together. You know, that's what excited me about it. And that from there I jumped in, I downloaded it, we started talking about it. I was like, oh, this is really cool, you know, like I'm loving the traversal mechanics, you know, jumping around, flying around on the glider, exploring the map, you know. opening everything. Opening like the map out and discovering new enemies. That was kind of really fun for me.
Yeah, and I think that is one of the things that Genshin does really, really well. It is the discovery. It is basically, sort of Zelda mechanics that they have borrowed and implemented really well. So no kind of slight on them. And hey, most of the ideas are borrowed ideas. It is very, very hard to come up with something completely new. And they have implemented really well. And it's always, what is it behind that hill? What is it behind that mountain or in that copse of trees that you discover? Which is done supremely well in Genshin, in my opinion. And that was my biggest surprise, actually. That the combat was, in the beginning, I've tried it and I'm like, yeah, the combat is okay. It's kind of like ARPG-ish. There is nothing much to it. Yeah, you kind of hit people. You use your ability, whatever that might be. And, okay, it's okay. But the being able to kind of go almost anywhere and climb anything and discover all these things, that was the biggest surprise for me. Followed by how bad the story was. But we'll get there. We'll get there. Because I was like, okay, right. It does say it's prologue, right? So the whole Mondstadt is prologue. We're just gonna take it slow. We're gonna build up the world. It's fine. And we'll get to the story in a little while. But what was your biggest surprise when you started playing? Of course.
Yeah. So I think for context, I actually played a little bit of Breath of the Wild. Like last year, like in the middle of last year. So that was actually
that was before you tried Genshin, is that right?
Exactly, yeah. About maybe 6 months before I tried Genshin, I actually did play Breath of the Wild for the first time. Like, I mean, I'd watched people play it before. I've seen reviews. I kind of had an idea of what Breath of the Wild was, but I'd never played it myself. So I thought, oh, sure, why not? I'll give it a go. I'll give it a chance. Maybe I'll like it. Yeah. And what I like the most about Breath of the Wild, because it kind of ties in to the conversation, since it's very similar in terms of the implementation of the world, the open world, and the mechanics. What I liked about Breath of the Wild was the nature of the world. It just felt like this vast space that you were, as soon as you stepped out of the initial cave, like you had this entire world to explore, and it was beautiful, and you had these rolling hills and these mountains, and you couldn't quite see over the mountains, and the game design kind of funnels you to a specific area initially, because it's like the tutorial area, but then once you've done that, then it's basically the whole map opens, and it's like, wow, this is kind of cool. What I didn't like though was at first I was like, yeah, the combat is fine, like it's serviceable, but then you're introduced to this like degradation durability mechanic for your weapons, and it becomes a massive chore. So the way it works is that you get a club that you pick up off like a basic enemy, and then the club lasts you like 5 attacks, and it disintegrates right in front of you, like it literally just disappears in front of your face. So it's like in theory it's like, okay, that's an interesting mechanic, but then the more you play, the more you're like, okay, I like this new weapon I got, and then it's gone within the next fight because it literally disappears after you've killed 2 enemies.
I have seen other people complain about that as well, actually.
Yeah, and that's the part that I like the least. And while the combat itself was, like I said, serviceable, and it was fun enough, there was some interesting physics dynamics that they introduced. Like you could like light grass on fire and things like that. And Genshin obviously took some inspiration from that. And in terms of how they designed the world. And so when I saw Genshin, I was like, oh yeah, no, this is clearly Breath of the Wild, but they're trying to add their own little twist on it. And like a lot of video games do that. Like they're basing their ideas on what came before. And there's definitely a bit of copying. There's copying of homework going on. But sometimes you have to do that to kind of iterate and improve on concepts. So Yeah, so again, going back to Genshin, then when I started playing Genshin, I noticed that yes, the open world mechanics are very similar. You have this glider, you're jumping around, you're exploring, you're finding what did you call those crystals in the air? I can't remember.
NMO?
Yeah, something like that.
Animalculus or something like that, yeah.
Animalculus, yeah. So, and then there's different elements, different types depending on the region.
Yes. So there is geo ones, there is air ones, there are, I'm sure, other elemental ones as well. Yeah.
Exactly. There's one per region, right?
Exactly. So each region has a different one, and then you can attune yourself to that, and your MC can change their Shizuma their abilities.
Yeah, and honestly, I really liked that system because you really had to look around the map and look around your surroundings to find these things.
Yeah.
And sometimes you'd see one really high above you, and you're like, "Wait, how do I get to that? Like, it doesn't seem like there's a way." And then you start learning that, okay, if I could get to a high enough position on the map, if I can find a big mountain, I can just jump from the mountain, even if it's like a kilometer away. I might be able to make it. And then you start planning these kind of expeditions, and you feel like an explorer, And I think that's where I started to be like, okay, no, I really enjoy this kind of system and these mechanics, these exploration mechanics, really cool. And then the combat also surprised me because the combat was way better than what Breath of the Wild had. In honesty, I mean, I don't think that's a huge hot take. I genuinely think it's a more interesting combat system.
Oh yeah.
And I was enjoying, switching between the characters on the fly, combining the different elements, and you start doing more damage and adding different effects based on those elements. Like, it was really, it was an interesting system. So yeah, no, I definitely enjoyed all those elements.
That's very cool. And yeah, I gotta say so, because I kind of poo-pooed the combat a little bit earlier on, but I was talking about before I got in and actually went to the trials. There are trials that let you experience, and it actually teaches you the combat with different characters. And my mind was blown, because it's literally like, wow, I thought you just hit the other person and then swap when the health gets low. Tremor Clan is asking you a question, Stipple, but we'll get to that, Tremor Clan, in a second. We'll get to that in a second. Name her now. But what kind of my mind was blown when I realized, hold up, so every single element interacts. So if you swap the characters, and you have fire and then you have thunder, which was my, of course, favorite thing. They blow up, so you do extra damage, but they also get thrown off and off their feet, etc., etc. And I was like, wow, there is so much more depth in there. And I think that was my biggest surprise, and one of the things that I really enjoyed the most, together with the exploration bit, because the exploration, I think, by far was the most enjoyable part for me of Genshin. And the second one was definitely the combat mechanics, even though after a while you kind of, because you as if you choose to play free to play, you're sort of funneled towards building up your main party. So you kind of choose your 4 people, and then you're sort of stuck with them, so you learn really well how they interact with each other, and which is fantastic. The synergies are really, really good. But the issue there is that because that's only 4 people, it kind of gets samey. You kind of like, yeah, I just did this, and then I did this, and yes, so I just set the fire on the grass, and then I just do a little bit of a AoE with electricity, and they all blow up, and then I do ultimate, and it's just kind of like by the numbers, which definitely brought the combat down quite a bit because of that. But definitely the exploration is something that I enjoyed the most. And I think since Tremor Clamor is I wish Genshin Combat had Mortal Kombat combos. Oh my god, Josh, you are so nice. It would be a completely different game, but damn, that would be awesome. But to answer Tremor Klena's question, when I first started, I really loved Lisa. I think Lisa was my favorite. And then I made a mistake of doing her character quest, and I was like, WTF, guys.
You ruined her. You ruined her.
Absolutely. Like, doing character quests should make you more invested, should be like, oh my god, yes, I absolutely love her. She is an absolutely manipulative and tortures people. Like, just for fun. Maybe not people, but still, it's a live person. I know that's... No, but, like, seriously, Josh, I know you're laughing there, but that is exactly what happened in the character quest. It's the first character quest you do for Lisa, and that's what happens. She manipulates you to do... She's being super sexy and manipulates you into basically doing dirty work for her throughout the whole day, and then she goes and you kind of catch this Hilly Curl, or Hilly Churl, as everybody kept saying to me, and I say Curly is cuter than Churly, so there you go, I call him Hilly Curls. And she just tortures the poor guy. And I was like, what the hell? And she's literally enjoying the torture part, and you're like, well, that's not on. That's not why I came to play this cutesy game. No, if I wanted that, I'd like read history. I'd play war games even though torture is not actually in a war game. But you know. So yeah, that was. So that's to answer who my favorite character used to be, and of course, after I have pulled Ayako, the Ice Girl. She was probably my favorite in terms of both the looks and the but let's pose that question to Stipple. And Stipple, what was your favorite character?
Yeah, I think I really enjoyed Zhangling. I'm a Zhangling boy.
oh, Zhangling, of course. Oh, yes, she is. I agree. I agree.
She was really fun. Like I did a few of her character quests, and they were very, very fun. I think because I'm such a foodie and I love food that just doing some of her quests, I was like, oh, this is just, we're just hanging out and she's cooking food, and then one of them you're running around looking for ingredients, trying to beat someone else in a competition, and it was just very funny, and I enjoyed her kind of quirky, fun-loving kind of personality. She was great, and you get her early on. You get her very easily through free to play. So that's why I was like, oh, look at this character. And then there's a theme for, I have a best boy as well. So I have best girl, I have a best boy. So the best boy character is Bennett. Because when you combine Bennett and Zhangling, you get this duo firepower combo going. You land down his ult, big AOE, really good, really powerful combo. Combine that with all your other elements, it was a great time. So yeah, I think Zhangling is best girl until, I got a little bit further. So I got to Inazuma, the Japanese inspired area. And eventually I actually pulled Raiden Shogun because that was part of the rerun, limited banner. So I picked her up, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. I get to use Raiden Shogun now, because I started seeing her in the main quest. And then I realized,
no, you can't.
I can't actually, because I'm not far enough in the main quest, so the Archon quest, as it's called in Genshin, and I can't actually level her up because I can't farm for the ingredients or the materials.
Well, you can level her up, you just can't ascend her.
Exactly, I don't have the materials to send her or build her, and I was like, oh, well, that's not very fun, is it?
Well, that's a good game design.
That's not very fun. Like what? Yeah, like especially when they offer her the banner, and then you're like, oh well, I guess I'll pull her because she's such a cool, like she's amazing character design. I watched I'm sure, yeah, the Genshin people have watched the trailer for her that they released prior to release, like a year and a half ago, and the trailer was amazing. It was like really well edited, fantastic music, the visuals were incredible. All the lightning effects going off, it was like a really cool trailer. Right? Made you want to get her, to pull for her. So yeah, when I actually did get her, I realized, oh, I can't actually play with her until I progress the main quest, and the Archon quest is very long, and it's very meandering, and it takes up a lot of time, especially when you're trying to explore and you get distracted the whole time, because it's you get distracted a lot in Genshin. You're running around, you're finding your materials, your whatever those things were called. Muculi, whatever.
Aeromonculi, let's call them this way. I can't remember anymore. Yeah. It's been a while since I played Genshin. So.
Exactly. Same here. So yeah, you get distracted. Let's just say that very often.
But yeah, so there's your answer. There is your answer, Charmaclema. The Acheron lookalike and Shanling. And of course Bennett, yes. But there's actually, I want to do a special mention. And the special mention is not the best character, but the character that I loved to hate. And that was, of course, the one and only Diluc. Stipple knows why. But let me tell you why. So, of course, Diluc is this, he's a rich man who is a brooding hero, but he's there to do right. Oh, he's Batman. Yes, that's right. Not only is he a Batman, he's a Batman that doesn't wear anything to mask his identity. But nobody in the whole of Mondstadt knows that he is Batman. He's literally going around doing Batman things, and he's like, ha ha! And everybody's like, oh my god, who is that? And he's like, ha ha, you'll never know, because I don't even wear a little eye mask for to be genre appropriate there. I was just like, what the hell is going on with this character? Who in their right mind thought that would be a good idea to have a Batman character without any of the second persona identity?
I sense some frustration.
Do you sense some frustration? there might be a little bit of a frustration there, yes. just like a smidgen. Just a smidgen of frustration there coming out. But no, the quest was just stupid. Like, absolutely stupid. It's like, what is the story that literally makes no sense? So, yeah. And funny enough, I have pulled Diluc as one of my first pulls. So I think I have pulled him when I was finishing up my 23 pulls or something. So I was like, oh my god, that's kind of cool. And then I've done the story, and I'm like, oh, I'm not playing this dude. I know he's 5-star, but no.
Yeah.
But that's kind of enough about the characters. Enough about me raging about Diluc. Or Diluc. Let's talk about combat a little bit, because I've touched on the combat a little bit before, but let's kind of dive in and dissect it a bit more. So, actually, because I have already said my piece, even kind of just touched on the combat. Simple, what are your thoughts on Genshin combat?
Yeah, I've touched on it as well, but
don't hold back, dude.
Yeah, no, no. I think overall, there's definitely problems because early on when I started playing, I thought the elemental system was really interesting, and you have 4 characters that you play around with, and the chat people are saying it is really cool to be able to play 4 characters on the fly, especially when you're switching them out so quickly. There's no like delay. It's literally like I'm playing one character and then I'm switching to the next, switching to the next. The whole idea is that you're going to be trying to get your energy up, and then once you have your ultimate up, you're going to start throwing out your ultimates and trying to optimize how you're throwing those out per character so that you're optimizing your DPS and your damage. And that is fun, definitely fun, especially once you start kind of getting the hang of it. But I think the problem was that one was that as a free-to-play player, Genshin isn't very kind to you when it comes to giving you the pull resources, and it just meant that I got quite unlucky. I wasn't able to get anything from the standard banner, just that opens up. I think it was a 30 or 50 pulls for the standard banner, and I got nothing out of that. Nothing that useful anyway. And,
that's a bit of a punch in the guts. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and then I was getting the resources, I was getting the gems, but it took me a very, very long time to get the 90 pulls that you needed to guarantee a 5-star. So I think I managed to pull around 80 to 90 pulls. It was my first time I actually pulled, and that's when I pulled Raiden Shogun, and that was already like I was playing the game for like 60 hours.
Yeah.
So what that meant was I was limited to these 4-star characters, and they were good. Like Zhang Ling was fantastic. You can play with her for the whole game. Bennett, I got he's fantastic as well. But then I was kind of limited. I was using the main character, the MC, as my main DPS for pretty much the whole time.
Same.
And it's unfortunate because it really doesn't allow you. Like I know you can change the element for your main character, which is cool. So you're able to change your element, from the initial wind one. Then you get what was the second one?
It was Earth. It was GR.
Earth, yeah. And the Earth one wasn't so great. Like I just felt it wasn't very easy.
It was actually very, very bad, apart from being able to create something that you can get to higher up places.
Yeah, like the big rock
that was it. And it wasn't very big either. So.
And it was very annoying, so sometimes it blocked my own attacks. The thing would come up and I wasn't able to attack properly. So I think being limited as a free-to-play player made it a lot worse. Like if the game was a little bit fairer, and I think we'll be talking about Honkai later, and this is where
Spawn-a-Rog, the best ability. Yes,
Spawn-a-Rog, yeah. But this is where Honkai Star Rail, they definitely made improvements on how they dole out resources, especially in early game, and to make you actually to experiment with different characters, to give you more options to play with, because you just don't have those resources, you don't have those characters to play with in Genshin, and that's kind of what started to kind of annoy me about the game, because like you said before, you start throwing out the same abilities like hundreds of times, and the combat starts to get a bit stale. It gets boring because you're not getting new characters, and you have to worry about resources. So like I can't level up all my characters because I have limited resources. So I realize that this is a key component of gacha gaming. At the end of the day, it's resource management at its center, and for some people that can be fun. But yeah, the combat started to kind of grate, and it didn't help that the main story was getting very monotonous and very meandering and quite boring, especially in the Liyue area.
Liyue? Right.
Liyue.
So you're talking about Liyue right now. Okay, so you're not talking about the Inazuma.
No, not even, because I got to I did maybe 20% of Inazuma. I didn't actually do that much exploration wise. Yeah, maybe 20%. Story maybe 20%. And I got a sense of it, and then I was starting to lose interest, and I was starting to get kind of annoyed at how the game was gatekeeping progression, and I wasn't able to level up my new shiny 5-star Raiden Shogun.
Well,
my
yeah,
waifu.
yeah. And, like, I have a slightly different experience to you regarding the progression, because I was kind of lucky in the beginning, but the end result was sort of similar. I only had 2 5-stars, right? So
Yeah.
it's not like, and one of them was Deluxe, who I absolutely despised because of the, as I have mentioned just a second ago, the absolutely mishandled story for him. But let's kind of circle back a little bit towards the combat mechanics. So I think, in my opinion, the biggest issue with the combat mechanics is tied into the actual gacha mechanics themselves, and not regarding the pulls that you do your wishes, not into that, but regarding how there is a mechanic for every single thing you do. There are so many different skills. First of all, each skill has a different name, right? So it's not like, hey, and then you're gonna do a fire AoE. No, then you're gonna do a fire flower blossom that would cause a fire kiss. And then once the fire kiss expires, there is a bloom that happens. And after the bloom, you have this, a worm. And then the worm blooms as well. And it's like, can you actually explain to me what does any of that means?
Yeah. No, I agree with you there, because they seem to in Genshin and in Honkai Star
In
Rail.
Honkai as well, but Honkai is a little bit better regarding that. But in Genshin, that was very prevalent.
The way they seem to design their characters is that they want each character to be unique in every aspect. So all of their abilities and everything that they do has to sound like it's new, because you're gonna want to pull for them.
Because if every character says, hey, and then he does fire dot, and then he does a water hill, and then he does a, I don't know, electricity AoE, it's like, yeah, but I have like 2 other characters that do electricity AoE. Surely that's kind of the same, right? But this way, it's a new name for everything. And you have no clue what's going on, because everything is just like, oh my god, this is brand new mechanics they're introducing. Wow.
And sometimes
go ahead.
But a lot of the time it's hard to distinguish between what's new and what's actually existed in the game before.
And that is done on purpose.
Yeah. I think it's not. I understand why it's done that way, and the reason is it always comes back to the gacha system, where they want each character to feel like their own character. They want them to have unique abilities, and like that's just the way they have to make those characters. Exactly. So, and yeah, in some ways it's cool. It can be like, oh well, this character has a specific ability that no other character has, and so in some cases they actually do have unique mechanics.
Yes.
But a lot of the time, they're not really unique. They're just rebranded. They're rebranded skills that existed already, and a different way to say this is damage over time. Different way to say AOE. Like you're 100% right there.
And in many ways, I was like, yeah, I understand. Of course, like you were saying, I understand why they're doing what they're doing. They do need to make each character unique and exciting, etc. But wouldn't it go a long way if I could understand that, hey, this ability that you cannot even hover over or click on to find out what it does, actually is just that dot, or is just that AoE, or it's just that skill replenish, or whatever it might be. Just like, even if the tooltips were done correctly, it would have gone a long way helping with that understanding. And of course, that ties into the second part, that because you're gated as a free-to-play player, and we will go into how much it actually costs if you do not free-to-play, and there are various options, of course, but we will look at, let's say, if you just say, you know what, I want this character, I want that weapon or light cone or whatever, and we'll examine how much it actually costs if you just go all out and decide to pay for that particular character and their weapon or light cone or whatever. Right, but we'll circle over to that. And the issue is that as interesting as the interrelation between different elements and skills and characters are, all of that fails because it's exactly the same rigid structure of 4 characters that you have decided to level up because of free-to-play decision to do it free-to-play. And that you have limited resources, limited energy every day to gain those resources, and you really have to concentrate on your main party if you want to kind of progress. And I don't want to say be competitive, because there is nobody to be competitive with. This is a single-player game. And make no mistake, even though we mentioned co-op earlier on, the co-op is absolute hack. You literally can do nothing together in co-op. You wanted to go through the main story in co-op? Nope. You wanted to do some maybe character missions in co-op? Nope. You wanted to do just a side mission in co-op? Nope. So, yeah, that is... How much blood and money did you spend to get Hu Tao? I don't think I've ever gotten Hu Tao. Ever. So, yeah. But
I don't even know who Hu Tao is.
I don't even know who Hu Tao is. Exactly.
Well, we're not deep enough on the Genshin
lore.
lore.
Are definitely not deep enough there.
But yeah,
that is...
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And that definitely ties into the gacha mechanics. And in this instance, it's where the gacha mechanics make the game much less than it could have possibly been than if it wasn't a gacha game, right? So, which leads us very, very nicely into, unless you have anything else to say about the combat mechanics, which is the question of what do you think about the progression and gacha mechanics? And we're talking about both. So, of course, being, having all these resources that you need to manage, and of course, pulling for the characters that you want and for the weapons that you want, if you have ever pulled for the weapon in, of course, Genshin, because we'll need to talk about that as well. So, yeah, what are your thoughts on that, Stipple?
Yeah, there's a lot of thoughts. I think a lot of this discussion will echo in the Honkai Star Rail discussion as well. But I think the main way it works is you have your Archon quests that you need to progress to gain your was it called the Archon level as well? I can't remember the Genshin term.
It wasn't Archon level, it was the adventure level.
Oh, adventure level, yes. So adventure level, and the good thing is, right, there's something that's good where to progress and unlock all of the main quest and to be able to do all the main quests, you actually, I think, only need to be adventure rank 35 for the entire game, even up to the latest content.
Pretty sure, yeah.
So that's kind of nice, where it at least doesn't gate you to say like, oh, you have to be the highest level to unlock the newest area. It just means that if you just want to do the story and ignore everything else, you can theoretically get through it reasonably quick. I mean, it's going to take you, probably 100 hours. I don't know, maybe something like that. If you just mainlined the main story and got, that's what you're interested in, that's cool. But the way that you play Genshin is generally, you want to explore the areas. You spend a lot of time exploring, doing side quests, main quests as well. But you're going to be kind of sidetracked and doing other things, dailies and things like that as well. So you're probably going to want to do other things, and that's where you start racking up that game time. You're going to be spending day in, day out doing your dailies, doing some exploration, maybe doing a few main quests. But that's where the main quest kind of comes in, and it's like you have like 100 quests in Mondstadt, then you have another 100 quests in Liyue, and then you have another 100 quests in Inazuma, and then
Exactly, yeah.
and what that really means is there's a lot of padding. Like those 100 quests, not all of them are like, oh my god, this quest is really interesting, and the characters they're introducing are so enthralling, and I'm so invested in the story. And no, it's not really like that. It's more like you get the crumbs when you start the game. You're like, oh, my sister's or my brother, depending on the
Yeah, sister or brother, depending
gender.
on what gender
You're like,
you chose.
oh,
Yeah.
they've been taken, and I gotta go find them. That's the kind of the carrot on the stick, and you're like, okay, well, let's start exploring and seeing what we can find and what information we can gather, and then it
I thought
doles
the
that
main story
information out.
was fishing Paimon out of the sea and just hanging out with Paimon, but maybe I was wrong. Do continue.
but yeah, I think just going back to the progression, it's like the way you progress in the game is quite tied to your adventure rank. So you do want to do your main quest, and because that's going to give you the most experience towards your adventure rank, and you're going to want to do a little bit of the exploration if you want to optimize, and you're going to want to do that because you get more of the resources for gacha pulling, right?
Yeah.
So then you're gathering all of those resources, and maybe with the start of the game, you don't really know how to handle all of those. You don't actually know what to do, like unless you read a guide or you watch some videos. I feel that's where this game and Honkai Star Rail and a lot of gacha games, unless you know how they're structured and how to play them, you can easily make mistakes in how you progress, because you might be like, oh, I'm just going to do this for a while, and then you spend 100 hours doing nothing and not actually progressing the game and progressing like what you can unlock in the game. Like I said earlier, you can unlock a new character, and then it turns out, well, that new character is locked behind an area like 3 areas ahead because the game's 3 years old.
Yeah,
so
exactly. Yeah.
And then you're like, what do I do now? Oh, well, you have to progress the main quest. Well, how long is that going to take? Well, at least another few months, because there's a lot of content.
Yes.
So you're kind of invested in, there's this idea of this, the sunk cost fallacy. I'm sure we'll mention that multiple times.
We'll come to that. We'll come to that towards kind of the second part of the podcast.
Yeah, exactly. And then you're like, well, I like I told you earlier, I wasn't really able to pull. I had to make do with the resources I was given. And by the time I got a pull, I was already, and I got my first 5-star. I was like, wow, this is great, but I can't actually do anything with it. So that's it. That's basically it. The progression is very much tied to the main quest, and the main quest wasn't that interesting. And yeah, that's basically the problem.
And let's talk about that. Let's talk about the main quest. Let's talk about not just about the main quest, but quest design in general in Genshin, because I think that bears mentioning. I have struggled through the Mondstadt, and struggled maybe is not the right word. I have played the main quest Archon quest. I played the Archon quest in Mondstadt, and I was like, you know what? Like, I want to feel something, and like the only thing I felt is like, you know what? The dragon, the Archon of Wind or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, it's a bit sad because he looks like he's imprisoned. So he had like these things on his back. And by the way, this is not really spoilers. It's the very beginning of the game. Yeah. So, and I was like, you know what? Yeah, that is very sad, and that's probably like, but that's all I got out of it. It wasn't like, oh my god, oh no, what is happening? I'm like, my heart goes, it's like, and everything else was just absolutely flat. I was literally like, when is this gonna get good? When is this gonna get good? Like, I've seen Gigak on the stream, he's like shedding a tear. There is a story there, but like maybe it's just a very, very long setup. I mean, it is called Prologue, so they're definitely like building out this world. And the thing is just, I don't care about this world, right? And most of the quests are, hey, go there, fetch this, talk to the other person, fetch that. Talk to the third person, fetch this. And you're kind of like, okay, yeah, sure, right, yeah. Oh, and now it's time to fight. Or go there, kill that many people, go there, kill that many people. And it's kind of like, yeah, okay, no, there is, of course, only so much you can do, but it can be much more palatable if the subject matter is actually interesting, right? If the writing is good, if you are engaged with a story. If you are engaged with a story, go and demolish that barricade can be really exciting to do. You're like, oh my god, this is gonna be amazing. But if the story is just boring, you're like, oh no, not another kill so many people quest.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, this is probably the biggest failure of Genshin, is quest design and storytelling. Just writing in general, it is really quite bad. There is no other way of saying it. And what put me off the game myself was what was the name of the Chinese themed or Asian themed, well, it's really Chinese themed area.
Liyue. Yeah.
It's the moment I got to Liyue. Hey, Tremor Clanner, thank you. But at the moment I got to Liyue was when you literally, even the pretense of having interesting quest is gone. Even the pretense of the story was absolutely erased. You go around and you do some absolutely asinine fetch quests. And the issue there is that all the dialogue is there to pad out the amount of time you spend in the game. It's not there to be interesting, and it smacks to me of, even because Hoyo is a Chinese publisher and developer, and as some of you might know, or maybe you do not, but Chinese party, and I'm not talking about the party, I'm talking about the political party, has a very big say in what the games can and cannot do. And a lot of the dialogue smacked to me of the Chinese party's line, where any sort of entertainment that is to be consumed by people abroad needs to have a thing inserted about how Chinese culture is amazing. And let's not mix words here. Chinese culture is amazing. It's a very old culture. However, when I have this pretty blatant advertising in the game talking about incense, colors, kites, perfume, etc., for hours upon hours, quest upon quest, that is when I have a huge issue, because, and not only that, but we also have this little sounding board right next to us called Paimon, who says, "Oh my god, this is so interesting! Tell me more! Wow, this is amazing! I want to hear more!" And they just keep bouncing back and forth that useless information that you really don't want to hear. Listen, if I want to know about Chinese culture, I'm gonna go to Wikipedia. I'm gonna go to a store and buy a book on the Chinese culture. I'm gonna watch a documentary. You know what? They're gonna be much more interesting than just an info dump and Paimon saying how excited they are about that whole thing. And clearly, I got really excited myself right now, because I feel very passionate about this writing that they have bestowed upon me with such love and care that made me pretty much drop the game. And that's what led me to drop in the game. But hey, Stipple got much further in the game than I did, so maybe there is something interesting. And by the way, there are probably going to be spoilers for you here. I have tried to be spoiler-free, but does it matter? Not really. So, Stipple, why don't you enlighten us? Why don't you enlighten us? Does the game pick up? Does the story actually get better as you go through the Chinese area and then Japanese area? Because, clearly surely there is a good story there somewhere, right?
Yeah, you'd certainly hope so. Yeah. But yeah, to answer that question, so there is something that you could objectively say is cool. Yes. That happens after the part where you finished, which was somewhere in between where you're talking to Zhongli, so into spoiler territory now. But when you're talking to Zhongli,
by the way, I don't care about spoilers on this. Usually, I'm like, do not spoil this for me. Spoiler alert! I'm not going to be going back to Genshin Impact again. So spoil away, my man. Spoil away.
Yeah. Well, when you're talking to Zhongli. And he's sending you off on all of these wild goose chases for resources. And yes. He's like, you got to get this, and you got to get this, and you got to get that, and we're trying to. We have to complete this ritual, right? So you're like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Let's go around and do all these chores for you, and go on these wild goose chases, and it's not very exciting, and you're kind of just doing it because it's part of the main quest. And then eventually you do that. You get all those things, and then he says, "Wait a second. There's something else over there. Why don't you go and do that first, and then you come back to me, and we'll do this ritual thing, because this ritual thing, it can wait. There's no huge
rush, man. No rush.
Even though you're saying this is really important all this whole time. It's like, no, we have to gather all these ingredients. This is really important for the ritual. We have to bring back the because the whole point was they thought that you arrive in UA and they're like, oh, this thing happens, and you it looks like you killed the god creature.
Even though why it looks like you killed him, nobody knows, because all of a sudden you're running. Why you're running, nobody knows. But hey, because you're running, everybody thinks you killed him.
Yeah.
So anyway, reasons.
He sends you off. You gather pretty much everything, and he goes, "Nah, you know what? Let's do that later."
Yeah, don't worry about it. Forget about it.
It's not that important. And then you go off and you do some more quests, and you're like, okay. And then you're starting, because if you remember, you have the those kind of the guardians of Liyue, like the Chinese guardians, and then they're
like
kind
spirits,
of at odds
local
with
spirits, right? They're kind
the spirits, and then they're at odds with the town. So the Liyue town's actually kind of run by humans.
Yeah.
So at some point, it was actually run, there was a deity and a god kind of looking over and protecting them. And now, after these hundreds of years, if not thousands, it turns out that the humans can actually handle it themselves. They can have this affluent trading hub, dock area where they can trade between other towns, and Mondstadt and Inazuma and all these places. That is interesting. From a 40,000 foot view, where it's like, okay, they're building out the world, and that's cool. But then what you're actually doing, and then once you go back to Zhongli and you talk to him, and you basically you're going to do this ritual, and then do you remember that guy? That guy, the really annoying dude that kept coming up. Like, it was when you were talking to Zhongli, there was a red-haired guy.
Luck?
No. Child.
Yes, child with an E, because E at the end of the name is cool and surely does not sound like child at all. Yes.
So then child, he keeps coming up, and he's like, with the evil. He's kind of like one of the evil guys, but he's in contact with you, and he seems kind of okay, but you kind of know he's not.
He's not okay.
He's taking you for a ride, you know. The child is evil.
The child is evil. All children are evil, but that one specifically.
Especially evil.
Especially, yes.
But yeah, and then it turns out, surprise, surprise, that he's not so good, and then he ends up trying to steal the power that's nestled inside Liyue, and you have a big boss battle with him where he transforms into this really cool creature, and he has all these different abilities, and it's this amazing battle. Boss battle, which is like probably the first good boss battle in the game, by the way. and then after that, you kind of this massive sea monster starts forming out of the sea, and it's this like evil god, and you're supposed to defeat it because it's coming to destroy Liyue entirely. Right? Yeah. So then you all band together, like the entire town plus all of those spirits that you were talking to and gathering. You gather around together, and the big sea creature comes out, and there's this big, massive, set piece moment.
That does sound pretty cool, by the way. I'm portals. I'm like thinking, oh, maybe I should have reached that part because that sounded really cool.
Yeah. There's portals coming out, and there's like you're battling all these creatures, and there's like there's cannons. Do you remember the cannon that didn't seem to have anything to do with the harpoon thing?
That you were like, oh, we have to fix it, but it doesn't point at anything, just like points it into nothingness.
Yeah. It turns out that that's actually really important, and this ancient harpoon gun is like extremely powerful and has magic properties. So you get a bunch of those guys in, and you start firing them at the giant god creature that's attacking you, and then you're all banding together, like the whole Liyue town, all those spirits that you gather, like this really cool moment that comes together. But I think the problem is the entire build up to that moment, like it just didn't feel earned. The moment itself and what actually happens is really cool, but then when you think about everything that happened building up to it, you're just like, oh, I don't know. I mean, it was cool, but like it just almost seems somewhat disconnected from the actual experience,
Yeah, because the whole thing. So usually there is such a thing as called foreshadowing, right?
Yeah.
And that is not used. It's literally not used. I know that the child is like, oh, he's evil, but he's kind of being nice and he's helping you, so it's okay. But there is not a single thing where it's like, oh, well, there is this rumor going, and hey, we've noticed like, somebody sneaking about, like weird figures, or, oh, they're like, we've heard somebody chanting on this mountain, and none of that is actually happening. It's literally, oh yeah, well, go and listen about the perfume for the next 10 hours, and then maybe go and let me tell you about the kites. We're gonna do this ritual, but actually, you know what? No. Come back to me in a couple of days' time. You do whatever you want to do in the meantime, but come back to me then. And then we'll talk, and we'll do that. But yeah, no, I agree with you there that even though I haven't gotten to that part, it does sound like an absolutely fantastic moment that was tremendous if you would have experienced it, but of course the lead up to it is absolutely mismanaged, mishandled.
Yeah, like was it worth, like I played the game for like 60 whatever hours, I would say, and that was the only like genuinely like, oh my god, that was an amazing moment that I will remember.
I thought the moment that you really enjoyed was when you were flying in Mondstadt and shooting pew-pew into the dragon. I thought that was the best mechanical moment of your life. Yeah.
That was like a turret section, but like a really bad mobile. You could clearly tell it was like designed for mobile, and it was really bad. And it was like, okay, like, did they really have to do this? They could have done it. They could have done it a lot better. Even just remove that entirely, because you fight him in like an actual boss arena afterwards. Big dragon. So like, why did they need this really shitty like turret section? It was so bad. Like it was really bad.
So when you said it was a turret moment, I heard you say it was a turd moment.
Well, yes.
Which is absolutely correct. It was a turd moment of who came up with that mechanic. Like, it was clearly designed for mobile, but like, what? You have a proper face down with the dragon later on, but we're kind of circling that.
Yeah, we're circling. But anyway, in terms of my progression, I got to Inazuma. The actual setup for Inazuma is really interesting because it adds kind of that political flavor to the story. And the whole idea is that Raiden Shogun, she is like, the head of the government there, and she's like the big authoritative figure.
Hence the name Shogun. That might have had something to do with that, but yes.
And she gets to pick, who comes in and who comes out. So there's trade going on, and that's interesting. But she basically says, we don't like foreigners. Foreigners get out.
Which is kind of, and this is, of course, the Inazuma is depicted in feudal Japan, which how feudal Japan actually was. There was a very severe trade restriction. I think at the time they only, or eventually they allowed everybody, but at one time they only allowed Dutch trading companies, if I'm not mistaken, to come in, and nobody else, and Dutch, of course, pilgrims. But yeah, so that definitely depicts Japan as it was like in feudal times.
And it was cool because of because of that premise in the game, you have to kind of smuggle yourself over there, which is kind of cool. You basically have to like get on a ship, and the guys, it's like a trading ship, and you have to get smuggled onto it, and then you're being sent over to Inazuma, and then eventually like you find a few contacts that help you along the way, and you're kind of you're there, but you're on like kind of like a visa type structure. Yeah. And you have restricted movement and all this kind of stuff, and then eventually like you kind of break away from that and you're able to traverse. But it's kind of, the setup was cool, but then they start doing this thing again where they're slowing down the actual progression of the plot to a crawl. They're just explaining like the region a little bit. There's like a lot of here's some ghosts. We're going to talk about ghosts for a while. We're going to send you off on the wild goose chase to find X and Y and do a bunch of stuff that you probably don't really want to do, but we're going to force you to do it anyway. So yeah, again, and that's where I was like, I'm just not enjoying that part of it. The setup and the land, the exploration is cool. They added some like those lightning, some new mechanics, some new puzzles, that kind of stuff. But even then, I was like, nah, I think I'm kind of done it. Especially after I found out that Raiden Shogun was a no-go.
It was a no-go. Yeah, the only good 5-star I have is a no.
Yeah, the only one.
The only one you have is definitely a no-go. Yes.
The only one. But yeah, that's where I got.
That's halfway.
And that's what made me stop playing. Right. As well. So that's kind of.
Yeah. And it's fair enough. I mean, and for me it was something similar, but I didn't get to Inazuma. I stopped in Liyue, and the reason why I stopped is because two things. One, I started feeling like I'm starting to hit that fatigue from daily grind, because many times I could only play story on the streams. So what I would do outside is I would do daily grinds, etc., etc., etc. And then I had about 80-90 hours in the game, and I haven't even done all of the Liyue at that stage because of that.
Yeah.
And coupled with an absolutely atrocious Archon quest or main quest, whatever you want to call it, leading up to this amazing moment that I've never reached. I just said, you know what? I have better things to do with my life than keep doing that. And that is why I have stopped playing Genshin Impact. At that stage, my dear brother said, yo, surely you don't have enough gacha games in your life. There is this game called Honkai. They give away a 5-star for free! You gotta join! Before we move on to the Honkai part of the podcast, though, I want to ask one simple question. Is Genshin Impact a good game? Take it away.
That's a difficult question to answer because I think it's going to be more difficult for Honkai Star Rail for me because I spent more time with that game and I enjoy that game more.
Yeah.
But
But
I think it's not as simple as saying that Genshin Impact is a bad game, because clearly a lot of people like the game, a lot of people play it.
yes.
There's definitely good. I'm getting a referral again. Definitely. Hoyo, that's how I get all my polls.
That's
how do you
it,
think I
that's
get all
it.
my 5 stars?
You've heard it here. That 1 5-star, that was from a referral link.
Yeah. So yeah, no.
Swimming
I think
in
a lot
dough
of people-
from Hoya.
a lot of people do like the game, and I did like elements of the game. I think based on, like, we've talked about this for almost an hour and a half now, so I think overall, yeah, there was a lot of negative, a lot of criticism of, like, the game itself, the mechanics, the gacha systems, progression, all that kind of stuff. But overall, like, it was an interesting experience. Because it was my first gacha game, and it was
Same.
your first gacha game, and I didn't know what to expect. And I think, in some ways, it kind of surprised me, because we did talk about that, and it did surprise us, and as to how, the gameplay is actually kind of fun, while we weren't able to get the most out of it because we had limited characters. We had a limited amount of resources and characters.
But that is part of the gameplay.
Exactly, it is. But in an extreme way, where I definitely wasn't able to engage with all the different types of elemental combinations, because I just didn't have all those characters.
Yeah.
But yeah, the gameplay was fun. I did enjoy what I played of the gameplay to a point, and the exploration was actually done really well. I would actually say that the best part about the game was the exploration and discovering new areas, and running around, jumping around, gliding around. Lighting up the beacons, the towers, whatever you want to call them. It was fun. It was done in
You can never get enough
good
lighting
way.
of the beacons in the open world game, right?
Exactly. But no, it was, some of those things were done really well. So
Agreed.
I think I'm conflicted, because overall, I think would I recommend Genshin Impact to somebody? I would say, based on what I know now, I would say no. But if you're into gacha games, it's probably one of the better ones. Like, from what I know, and from other games, and from my understanding, it's definitely not the worst one. If you want to play a gacha game, I mean, I'll probably be like, okay, if you absolutely have to, maybe check out Genshin, and then I'd say possibly check out Honkai Star Rail first. But I realize they're very different games in terms of their mechanics. So, like, you're talking turn-based game with no exploration, compared to a game that's all about exploration and it's more action combat system. So yeah, those are kind of my high-level thoughts, I suppose.
That's perfectly fine. That's what I kind of wanted out of you. For me, I'm actually gonna be a little bit more controversial. I would say that while there is a lot of good things in Genshin, like the combat, like the exploration, and like, let's face it, the graphics and music are fantastic in the game. And not just the graphics, but the art direction, I think, in Genshin is absolutely fantastic.
I would actually say, sorry, just to interrupt, I would actually say it's better than Honkai Star Rail.
It is
I actually
100% better, yes.
There's definitely more budget gone into the assets and the lighting and the animations overall, because obviously it's an action game, so the animations have to be really fluid. It has to be, like, smooth. The graphics, the visuals, the landscapes, all incredible. Like, I have so many screenshots that I've taken. I played the game actually on PlayStation 5. I played it a little bit on mobile, but the problem was on mobile the action combat didn't quite suit. Yeah. But when I was playing on PlayStation 5, I was taking loads of pictures. Like, genuinely, the artists had a great time, and they're really talented at just putting that world together.
Yeah.
So I gotta give them a shout out there.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that was my point. And if you go somewhere either in the morning or in the evening, and you look out, that the scenery is absolutely gorgeous. It is beautiful. Just out of this world. And yes, it is, of course, all kind of cel shady like, but that does not take away from the beauty of it in the game. And the open world is really, really strong part of the game, because if you can see it, you can get there. I remember first being in Mondstadt, looking around and seeing this huge mountain covered in fog and ice, and I'm like, oh wow, that looks cool. And then when I realized I can actually go there, and I can climb that mountain, and I can get to the very top of that mountain, that was just mind-blowing. So kudos to that, even though, yes, of course, they have taken that from Breath of the Wild. But the implementation in Honkai of the exploration and open world is really well done. However, more controversially, I will say, even with all that, I do not think Genshin Impact is a good game. And that is because of all the things we've discussed. So things like progression mechanics, things like being obscure on purpose with the skills, what they do, how they relate with other characters, etc. And just having gacha elements shown down your throat. And of course, the reticence of the developers to be a little bit more open with getting 5-star characters. Like, they are easier to get in Honkai, but we will talk about that. So I think the gacha mechanics definitely bring what could have been a very fun and interesting game, and a really fantastic game, to kind of this, yeah, this is not a good game. I cannot two people, even if there are so many good things about the game. But yes. Oh, the fights are good in Genshin. I do not deny that the fights are good, but because of the gacha mechanics, the fights become very, very samey eventually, because you are trying to level up your main party. So you know exactly what everybody is gonna do, you know exactly the rotation you're gonna take, and it's just literally like, yep, I'm gonna rotate to Lisa now, and then we're gonna rotate to let's say Barbara, and then we're gonna do the fire, whoever I might have, like Dilak or whatever, and it's just like, yeah, it's the same, and again, because of you're not really encouraged to experiment with different party compositions, because hey, everything is gated by block resources.
Yeah.
As a free-to-play player.
Yeah, and that's important, because
that is very important.
And also the time you put into it. So I think, like Trem, from Trem's perspective, I think Trem has a lot more hours put in. Did he say 300 hours?
Yeah, I think Trem McLennan has about 300 hours.
Yeah, so the way these gacha games work is they want you to play every day. So they want you to progress very slowly over a long period of time, and eventually you're going to get enough resources to pull for those 5-star characters, and you get more of those 5-star characters and the new 4-star characters over time. But that's going to take you months and months of grinding, doing dailies and doing the main quest and all that kind of stuff. So the way that these games are designed, they're designed to be played over a very long period of time, and they really want you to play over a long period of time daily. I think it's important. The daily part is really important, because if you weren't playing daily, then there's a chance that you could fall off the game and not come back. While if they have you playing and getting those, like, you know, just the maximum amount of resources per day, then you're able to kind of to extend the duration for that player, and for them to potentially spend money later, you know, down the line. They might actually want to spend a little bit of money because they're so invested in the game itself.
No, I absolutely agree. And Thirsty Boy is saying, well, it seems like you simply don't like the game's gameplay loop for combat. And I disagree. I think the gameplay loop for combat is very good. But my point is that if you are playing free-to-play, which we both have played free-to-play, I think somebody caved in and paid a little bit of money, but not this person. But the gameplay loop for combat is very, very fun until you are doing it with the same party all the time. And then you're literally just going through the same loop. You're switching to one character, then to the other character, then to the third character. You do their skill, you do their ultimate, you switch to the other character, do the skill, the ultimate, switch back, because you kind of know how your party works, because that's the only party you have that is viable. And you are discouraged from experimentation with other characters that you might have gotten that might be super cool, but you lack the resources to do that. And that is the biggest issue, because yeah, the combat is fantastic, but brought down by the fact that, well, you're doing exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
With bigger numbers, yes. But it's literally the rotation doesn't change. You unlocked all your skills straight away. So you're using exactly the same skills. You do more damage, of course, which is fine to see numbers go great, big, huge, but you're still only doing exactly the same rotation. There is no experimentation. It's literally like, yep. Sorry, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, no, the main issue, and I think what Thirsty Boy is saying is, you know, he thinks we didn't enjoy the combat necessarily, but that's not quite it. So for me, the early game experience, I think, is poor in Genshin. I think they could do a lot better with one, giving you more resources, being a little bit more lenient, giving you some more characters. And this will feed nicely into Honkai Star Rail, because I actually think this is where Honkai Star Rail improved in so many different ways, in significant ways.
Yes.
They have a lot more systems where you're not punished as much, so they have a 24-hour refresh for the energy. For the Trailblazer energy, so whatever that's called in Genshin, versus the 20-hour system, meaning in Genshin you're actually encouraged to log in twice a day, versus in Honkai Star Rail where you're actually you're okay. You can get away with logging in once a day doing your dailies and then log it off and hopping on the next day. So that's one thing, and then there's other things like you have that reserve energy. They added reserve energy in Honkai Star Rail, so even if you don't play for 1 day or 2 days, you're still getting that excess energy given to you for free. While in Genshin, even though it is at a slower rate, but in Genshin Impact, you're just limited to that daily resource. I think it's 160 unless they changed it. So what that really means is, you're going to be gated much more in terms of how much you can invest into your characters. They don't give you out enough of the pull resource to get new 5-star characters and 5 and 4-star characters. Yep. So that your pool of characters is super limited in Genshin Impact in the first 50 hours of gameplay. So that's where we got to, 50 to 100 hours of gameplay is where we were at. If you continue to play more, you're going to unlock more characters. You're going to get more options, and you're going to get more resources that you can pull into those characters, and then you're going to start experimenting. But I think that's the problem. They take too long to get you to that point. So that's where it becomes unsatisfying for players like us, where if it takes 100 hours for the characters' dynamics and the synergies to really come into effect and for you to actually be able to unlock more of them, I just don't think that's good enough from a game design standpoint.
I 100% agree on that. Yeah.
And this is where I kind of convinced you, and I can get into that kind of now, I guess.
And we'll get into that in a second.